Hi everybody, Adam here. Welcome back to our Lego room. In today's video, we're taking a look at Lego Icons set 10335, the Endurance. This set contains 3,011 pieces and super impressed with how it turned out. As soon as this set was announced, I knew it was something that I was going to want to pick up. Really cool for, fans of ships, fans of, history. There's a lot of detail packed into this set, which I really appreciate. I think it's going to be an amazing display piece. And I love the fact that in the beginning of the instruction manual, they include a number of pages talking about the history of Shackleton and the Endurance. Big fan of these little details when they add them in. I think it makes a lot of sense for a set like this in particular. I've talked about this before with a number of the train sets that we've picked up and purchased. Always really interested in learning more about the situations and circumstances that some of these different models lived in and worked in. So really happy with everything they managed to pack into this first part of the instruction manual. And as one would expect, instruction manual was quite clear. It was an enjoyable build experience. There's a lot of stuff that you have to work on towards the end with all the sails, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. So let's jump ahead now and take a look at the finished build. So as you can see, really cool and sizable finished model. Some of the things that you're going to notice that stand out right away, like I said, the size from end to end, it is roughly 31.5 inches. And from top to bottom, roughly 18.5 inches. So quite a sizable model, and they've done an excellent job of recreating everything at that scale. One of the things that's small but I appreciate is the Endurance little info placard here at the base of the model. This base was really nice. You use a combination of that and a little helper jig that you make at one point in the instructions to keep everything solid and balanced. Basically, these sit along the bottom here throughout the build, keeping everything balanced and stable while you're putting parts on. And then as you get to the end, you remove the jig and you slide the base over to the middle here. And, it's a really nice solid base for the ship to rest on. I've got a spot picked out for where this is going to live out in the Lego room on a shelf. I'm pretty sure that it's going to fit, not by a lot. I think there's going to be maybe 1/4 of an inch of clearance where I'm going to put it, but hopeful that it will fit in nicely there. I think it's going to be a great display piece. Now, continuing on with sort of eye-catching details and things that I really appreciate. Love the red ensign flag at the back here. Really nice material for that. And I was a big fan of the sails in general. Like I mentioned earlier, I was kind of, at the end, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of fiddly things to get sort of attached to the model and, hooked up in a way that everything looks right. I was impressed with the clarity of the instructions when it came to working the rope or thread basically through all the different access points across the model. And it was pretty straightforward to see where all the sails ended up fitting on the different masts across the entirety of the ship. So really happy that it still was a lot to do, but happy that it wasn't as bad as I thought it could be. And I think that, it all looks really amazing. The sails are awesome. Wasn't sure how much that thread, sort of quote unquote rope was going to add to the overall model, but I think it looks great, adds a lot. Love how it works through the sails here at the front. Really nice details around the front end of the ship here. You can see the anchor on there, lots of little railings all the way down. The rope ladders, not a lot of fun to put together, but I think they look really cool as well. Big fan of the sort of quote unquote outer rope edges that they use for these ladders. I think a nice piece and interesting to see it in this particular color. Pretty sure I've seen it in more of a light gray before. But I think it works really well. A detail that I hadn't really considered or thought about, but I think having those rope ladders adds a lot. The extra detail you can see here, another one that I had seen on the model but didn't really appreciate until I was building them out and adding them to the main ship, is the lifeboats here. Really cool. Love the way they look and love the way that they hang off the boat here as well. Really, really cool. And, I think what a lot of this adds is sort of multi-dimensional detail. There's a lot of depth to the build. Whether you're looking at the outer edge here with those lifeboats, when you get in towards the hull area, lots of on-deck details, and there's even a few details inside the boat itself. Kind of cool when you're putting it together. I don't envision taking some of these top parts off. You can lift this part off, you can lift this part back over here off. I just don't see doing that ever again, really, maybe on rare occasions. But there are some nice details inside. Those were cool to see as we were building this and putting it together. One of the things that I'm really impressed with at the back here, we've got a working rudder for the boat that turns as you turn the wheel up here on the deck. So really fun to see that detail there. I think it adds a lot, and really appreciated, putting that together, seeing what was happening there, and then seeing the finished result and how that worked. Other fun details, love what they did here to recreate the stairways up to different levels of the boat. You can see them there. We've got some in the middle area here, which you can kind of see. It just works really well, and it was a fun detail. I've mentioned before on the channel, big fan of micro scale builds. I think it's really cool to see how Lego designers in general go about recreating things that, are at a much larger scale in a small scale format like this. And I think these stairs are a great example. Interesting use of parts that normally you wouldn't see in this sort of context, but when you're thinking about a scaled down version of a real life ship like this, it makes a lot of sense and works really well. And you can see we've got a couple more of those sets of stairs at the back here as well. So, overall, really cool. I think an interesting build from a historical perspective. Like I said, interesting to learn about Shackleton and the Endurance. How this ship was used and where it ended up being found. Impressive that they were able to find it all those years later. And, just it's going to be a really impressive model, I think, to have on display as well. With all of the, the sails and the rigging there with the various threads going through. And then, as you step closer and you start to see those lifeboats and then all the deck details, there's just a ton of things to sort of absorb, and it's going to be a really cool eye-catching piece, I think, and a great display item for the Lego room. I am also really looking forward, I built this now. I'm looking forward to getting the Titanic built and up and displayed beside the Endurance. We've got the paddle boat as well. So over the next, coming weeks, months, definitely expect to see several more larger scale ship builds being put together and then added to our display area around the Lego room. Really cool. And, based on the enjoyment I had here, highly recommend picking this set up if you haven't already. And, looking forward to seeing how some of these other boats were put together and to see what similarities there might be and what other types of techniques the designers might have used in putting them together. But super happy with how this turned out. Very much an iconic set. And, like I said, it was a lot of fun to put together too. Definitely was concerned at the beginning with all of those sails and the rigging and everything, but really happy with how it came together. And I think they did an excellent job of designing it out in a way to sort of maximize realism and sort of impact of the model while keeping the build quite reasonable as well. So lots of fun, and definitely keep an eye out for this model on display in our Lego room as you watch upcoming videos. I think it's going to be a great display piece. Now, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please make sure to do so that you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. And thank you very much for watching. We will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.